Driven by a lifelong passion for challenging herself, can you hear me? Okay. With new and diverse experiences, Debbie Barnett embodies an entrepreneurial spirit that has led her to establish several successful businesses. Debbie's first introduction to Mahjong was by her mother, an avid player who Debbie watched play with her friends during the summer months at the Colony Beach Club in East Haven, Connecticut. In her mid-20s, she was eager to learn the game from experienced players, and after that, the rest is history. Debbie began teaching Mahjong 15 years ago in order to share her love of the game with others. She has stated that Mahjong can indeed be very challenging to learn, but with an open mind and a positive attitude, you eventually will get there. As with anything else, there is always a learning curve to mastering a newly acquired skill. Unwilling to hit the brakes on her ambitions and settle in retirement, Debbie decided to tap into her creative side and in 2019 published her first book, Unlocking the Secrets of American Mahjong. It is a step-by-step illustrated guide on how to play American Mahjong. Understanding the growth in online learning, Debbie created the School of American Mahjong, a virtual interactive platform and the first of its kind where students can take classes from beginner to advanced levels. The online school opened in January 2020. Her latest and most exciting foray is American Mahjong Ventures, the biggest of her endeavors, as she partners with one of our Mahjong community's greatest influencers, Michelle Frizzell. Another plug for our November 19th Friday event, which is fabulous. Between Debbie and Michelle, they will be bringing us the best of what Mahjong has to offer, with American Mahjong conferences, retreats, and instructor certification. Please help me welcome from the villages of Florida, Debbie Barnett, to our wonderful JCC.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. How about without the microphones?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, you guys can. Okay, I'll use the microphone. Well, I am absolutely excited and thrilled to be here in the Los Angeles area and at the Irvine JCC. I have been looking forward to doing this, and as Jerry said, Jerry and I have been working together for, I think, approximately a year now. She was the very first JCC that came on board and started sending me students for the virtual online platform, which I'm going to show you a little demonstration of later on. So thank you, Jerry, so much for working with me this past year. It has just been an honor. So now that my intro is over and I don't have to bore you with any more about me, I would like to find out from everybody here what your level of play is based on how long you've been playing. So for those that have been playing for less than 3 years, raise your hand. Wonderful. Okay, are there any newbies that have been playing for a year or less? Very good. Okay, so before I go on to the more, the higher levels, I wanted to just mention that for you guys, if you want to raise your hand one more time, newbies to 3 years, raise your hand. Just take a look around, everybody, so maybe you can connect with these folks to form your tables after. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that you guys know that, you know, you're the 1 to 3 years. Okay, how about 3 to 5 years? Okay. 5 years plus. I could have guessed at that. Okay, very good. So we have all levels here, which is wonderful. And my goal is that everybody can pick up or learn something. And I've always said, when I went to different conferences and different talks like this, if I could walk out with one new concept, it was worth my time. So my goal here is that will happen for you. And I think I stepped out of the camera view. Okay, I got to remember to look down a little bit at that. All right, super. So let me grab this so we can get started. Okay, so this talk is about American Mah Jongg Strategies. Now, I know some of you are going to find a lot of these things familiar, and others are going to be totally new to this. But what I ask is that if you have a question, if you have something to write it down, or even maybe send yourself a little note in your phone, at the end I am going to take questions, and I'm hoping you guys do have some. Alrighty, so let's start out. Alright, so strategies, okay? New players, strategies. They can't even think about it. They're still trying to figure out what to do when the tiles are dealt into their hand, right? But once you get past that point where you're able to figure out what to pass during the Charleston, figure out how to form your hands, and navigate the card, you're going to want to venture into strategies, because that's what gets you leveled up. That's what gets you to be a better player. And the strategy levels are endless. So you can take it as broad as you want. All right, now, what is strategy? Strategy is a plan of action designed to achieve a particular goal. So in Mah Jongg, what would those goals be? Can anybody tell me to make Mah Jongg? I heard that. What might be the other goal? To prevent someone else from getting Mah Jongg. This is a very smart audience. Oh, and by the way, I just wanted to, somebody made a suggestion to me, and of course I already forgot it. That's no indication of my age. Please don't say it is. But how many of you learned Mah Jongg online and have never played in person? How many of you have learned online and only played maybe a couple of games in person? Okay, that's why I wanted to. There's like 4 people that are very new to in-person play, and that's another whole story, because I was talking to a few ladies about that. Okay, so with strategy, there is no right or wrong, but there is good, better, and best. And that is really the truth when it comes to American Mah Jongg strategies, because it is quite subjective. We all see things a little bit differently. We all feel a little bit differently about things, especially when it comes to those beautiful little tiles sitting in front of us. All right. So, we have strategy, okay? Strategy definitely creates a mental challenge, because you've got to think about all kinds of things going on, and not just, are you having a hard time?
Yeah, it's very light.
Oh, you can't see that screen back there at all? Oh, the shades maybe a little?
The problem is,
We'll get it worked out.
turn the lights. Well, the problem is that we can't videotape that.
We had a little challenge setting up with the lights out.
But
You can't see a lot of.
do the best we can.
How does that look? Is that
Right. How's that? Is that better? We're going to also white tent, so you do that one. Yeah.
Maybe this. Oh, there is one up here. I don't know how you're. Oh, can you do that?
Okay.
All right, let's see.
The other two.
Is that working out better?
And those two, and you'll be done.
Yeah.
Better? Oh, it looks like it's getting darker by the minute. Beautiful.
Is that still okay?
All right, so strategy will definitely create a mental challenge, because you have to really start thinking about not just what you're doing, but what others are doing. It also will help with your decision-making skills. It goes along with that. You have to make a lot of decisions when you're using strategy. It can create a more competitive environment. Okay, now that's something that I do want to touch on a little bit, and it also will change the outcome. Now, as with any game that involves luck, I cannot guarantee you that this is like a disclaimer, that anything that you see today on screen is going to be foolproof and 100% guaranteed to create an outcome that you want. But I always tell people that take strategy, the more strategy you know, the more you close the luck gap. So when you're a beginner player, you might have, it's all luck. You're going to Mah Jongg once in a while because the tiles that you collected just happen to come your way. But when you get to be a better player, a more experienced player, and you use strategy, you get to Mah Jongg more, and you play a more defensive game. Now, Mah Jongg more, if everybody is in the same boat I'm in, and I could tell you about last week, I didn't have a joker all day. At least I didn't have a joker all day based on my own picking or having the tiles dealt into my hand. I had to grab a few in exchange, and that was it. So we all have those days. The best players have those days and sometimes don't win a game. So, the competitive play I just want to touch on briefly. Competitive play amongst players makes it very exciting. If every single person follows certain guidelines with strategy, you're going to have a lot more fun at the table. You're not going to have somebody doing something that you're sitting there scratching your head, why did you do that? Now we all have to pay out for the table, okay? So that's another thing. Strategies does help with that. All right, so with strategies, the key component, first thing, important, first most priority is optimization. And optimization is identifying the strength in your hand. Now, it also includes style, which is how to pick, how and when to pick a hand. And there's timing involved with strategy. So strategy is just not wing it strategy. There is specific strategy that you can use in the beginning, middle, and end game. So we're going to talk about more about all this. And strategy also includes tells. And tells are situational awarenesses. And we're going to talk more about that as well. Okay, so let's go back to optimization. Everybody sees their tiles differently. Do we all agree? And if anybody uses a fifth player better, how many times have you walked around the table thinking, why aren't they playing that hand, right? Have we had that? How many people have had that happen at least one time? Oh yeah, okay. So we all see tiles differently, and we all see our potentials differently here. But the key is where and how do you pick the strength in your hand? Okay, so in this case, strength in a hand, for me, would start with any multiples that I have in my hand. Okay? I will also look at how many jokers I have. But I will work around those multiples to start with. And then I'll go to, from that point, I'll go to picking the different families, which I call categories or sections on the card. I like to refer to as families. So then you'll go to picking your families. And of course, we all know that everything can change during the Charleston. So here you see some tiles on the screen, okay? Now, in this particular set of tiles, all right, I have down below the consecutive run. But there are also other things that you could be picking here to hold to make a good choice about what you would end up passing in the Charleston. Okay? So I do see a lot of consecutive run because we have a lot of one, the lower end runs. We have 1, we have 2, we have 3, we have 4, and we have a 5. So that to me is a good indication that this particular set of tiles could have strength in the consecutive run. All right, now, I also see the low end 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 family here. All right, so then you have to decide if you don't have 3 tiles, but in this case you would have 3 tiles because we could do the 8 band, the 7 dot, and the 8 dot here, and still keep the low end 1, 3, 3, 5. You could still keep looking at and playing consecutive runs. And again, you could get 3 tiles in, and this could all change. Now, I bet that there's people here see other things. Does anybody see anything different here? Where is, oh, I have the mic. I thought I was looking for the other one. Did you have it? Oh, does anybody have another, something they see? Okay.
2, 4, 6, 8.
Okay, so we have, somebody said 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, yeah, there is some there. However, you have one of, I think, each suit, right? 2 crack, 4 dot, of 2 dots, 8 dot, and 8 band. So it's a possibility, but if we had to weigh out the best option here, it's probably going to be, because we're going to try to work around the ones, which are a pair, either a consecutive run or the low end 1, 3, 3, 5 would be my second choice. So I would get rid of the 8 band, 8 dot, 7 dot. Now, some people don't pass like numbers. I do not care about passing like numbers. There's 1 through 9. If the person receiving my 2 8s happens to be playing that number in like numbers, well, they just got a present from me. But there's a lot of other things that are more priority for me to worry about than passing 2 of the same numbers. Okay, so target multiples, okay? And then what we just did was kind of whittle it down to see what we would end up passing, okay? And the other point here, in the third bullet here, is choose the family that has the most flexibility, such as consecutive run. And then you see I have but beware. Okay, this is something that newer players get hooked on. Okay, now the newer players out there, tell me if you love it when all the tiles are the matching color and the matching suit. Oh yeah, I figured, yeah. So in my book, I kind of call that the beginner's death trap, only because there are so many beginners that have come to take an advanced beginner class or intermediate class from me, and they're constantly collecting the same suits. Even if they don't, there could be in 5 families, there could be no one that looks obvious, but they're collecting them because they're like, well, they're all the same. Yeah, you guys can relate, I can tell. All right, so that's why I say but beware, okay? Consecutive run is our most flexible family on the card, okay? You can do an awful lot with it, but you want to make sure that you use it properly and that there is potential for some run, because you don't want to collect tiles and you're giving up, oh my goodness, great 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 options, or 2, 4, 6, 8, or the year hand, or something else. You will be blinded by that middle section in the middle of the card, and that's going to prevent you from growing. So I force my students, matter of fact, I do a little game. I'll tell them, you cannot use any consecutive runs. You're forced to see something else. And it does. It actually does work. Okay, so now we have here the same hand tiles shown, and I have odds under it. And we talked about the odds and the lower end 1335 being a potential. Actually, I think this is a different set, isn't it? No, it's not. Okay, it's the same set. So you definitely have some good choices here. I know some people might look at this if you're newer and say, oh, this is ugly. This really is not ugly. I'll tell you, I think this is great. I have no complaint about these tiles as long as I get one of those jokers. Alrighty. Go here. Okay, so we can talk about strategy style, because everyone has their preferred style of strategy. So there are different styles of play, and the first one is fixed. Some people pick a hand from the onset. Okay, now I know some advanced players that still do this. They see a hand, they pick it, and they just don't go off target. So if that's your style, okay. Doesn't give you a lot of flexibility. Okay, now we have adaptive play. And that is when you can identify the strength of the hand and then pick a family or families using most of the remaining tiles. And then you do not pick a hand until you run out of discards. That's a nice way to play.
Yeah.
Very nice. And then you could do a hybrid. Play adaptive and then play fixed after the Charleston. So you've got these three different options, and I'm pretty sure everybody probably fits into one of them, maybe more sometimes. Okay. So as you can see at the bottom of the screen, fixed is good, hybrid is better, and adaptive is best. Right. Okay, so now we're at the timing strategy by wall. And here we have 4 walls, and they're all built so nicely. Look at that. One of them's out of place. All right, begin game. Begin game, we deal out. It's the Charleston. So we've had the wall dealt out, and this is what we have left. And let's talk about begin game objectives. Alrighty, we want to arrange the tiles and then identify the strength of the hand. We've already talked about that. The begin game is the Charleston. During the Charleston, we want to mitigate risk with passes. Not always easy, but it's certainly good to put that into play if you can. All right, so how do we mitigate risks, okay? You would want to pick, if you had multiple winds or dragons, mix them up. So maybe you would take a wind, stick it in with another number, and if you really have a tough time, you could possibly, throw in a dragon there. But you want to try to mix it up, and you want to try, if at all possible, to mix up the suits. How many times do you hear someone say, oh my goodness, okay, I know everybody's going to raise their hand. How many times have you heard someone say, you're going to like this pass? Maybe only 3 people? No. It's possible. I know everybody has heard it, right? Okay, right, exactly. Now, if you passed a 2 crack, a 6 crack, and an 8 crack, right? Okay, you're going to hold your breath because we all get stuck doing these things at times, right? The best of us do. That's why we say that, because we're trying to cover up, our shame. And then, how many people say to you when they get the pass Thanks a lot. You missed me, all 3 tiles, right? It happens so much. So, the key is, though, to do the best job you can. Look, nobody, I love it when people say, is this legal to do? I'm like, legal? You're not going to jail over this game, I promise you. Okay, you do the best you can, and that's it. Okay, we've all got stuck passing a pair, but we're going to talk a little bit about that. Oh, that's that one. No. Okay. So again, different numbered tiles from each suit. Mix it up. Okay. Try to mitigate by not passing all in the same family. What I just talked about with the 2, 4, 2, 6, and 8. Try not to pass all the same suit tiles. White. So how many people say white dragon? How many people say how many people call it a white dragon? How many people call it a soap? Oh, okay, so this area where I'm from, it's like a mix of what you'll hear. So white dragons are flowers. Okay, seriously, dragons, I would pass. A white dragon, I will pass even over a flower, believe it or not. But to me, they're both about on the same playing field. I don't want to pass either of those tiles unless I get in some kind of precarious position. And if you know how to prevent this from passing, taking advantage of your blind passes, your first left and your last right, you can prevent this as well as preventing passing a pair. Whoops, I'm going the wrong way. All right. Okay, your hand tiles, again, try to avoid. Has anybody thought about what next year's going to look like? 2, 0, 2, 2. Oh my goodness. And of course, the National Mah Jongg League's going to have to put at least one hand in there that has 2, 0, 2, 2, and then more 2s. And you're going to have to use jokers, lots of jokers. Oh my goodness, I hope they value it more, because some of the hands, I don't know about you guys, but some of the hands on the card this year, I feel like they should be a higher value. Has anybody thought about that? Yeah, me too. All right. So the pairs, here we got to pairs. Passes last resorts, no one to break them up. And so let's talk about that first. Okay, so when you end up with a pair in your hand that you got it in, you don't even know what you're going to do with it because it doesn't go with anything you're collecting, right? We've had that happen before. So just break it up early enough. You have to do a little calculation in your mind to say, if I break it up now, do I have a blind pass on the next one, right? Or do I have it where I'm going to have to do that second must across? So that's one thing you have to do a little calculating so that you don't get stuck. Because sometimes, I know if this has happened to me more than once, I'll get a pair in and I'll be like, oh my God, now I have to change my whole hand. Has anybody changed their whole hand when they've gotten a pair? And actually, Mah Jongg. And so at the end, I'll thank the person who gave them to me. I won't do it during. I promise, I don't do it during. But that has happened to me more than once. Now another thing is that you could receive a pair during a blind pass. So they go to grab a tile from the receiving player, and they happen to grab the same tile. And that sometimes happens, because I've heard people be like, they look at their pass, their incoming pass, and they'll be like, whoa, and they're like, thanks so-and-so for that one, because I did a blind pass, and it must have been her tile. So we all have that happen. Okay, alrighty, so Every time you get in a new Charleston pass, oh, for you beginner players, oh, I wish I could make it easier for you, but no, it doesn't get easier. You have to reassess after every pass you get in, because we all know that sometimes our whole hand and what we're going to do can start changing just on one pass that we receive. It is amazing how that works. But that's why it makes it so much fun here. It just, you never know. It's like Mah Jongg is forever changing right before our very eyes. Okay, so reassess, especially if a new multiple pops in. All right, count the cost of increasing risk as the hand develops. Okay? So with this, you want to just make sure that you know what you're playing, that you're not going, you have to count the risk, because are you going to play a hand, go with the tiles that are easier? Are you going to go for the gusto and stick with that singles and pairs hand? But that's all part of what you're going to assess when you, and of course if I have no jokers, then I'm going for it. You guys feel that way too? You have no jokers, you might as well make a pretty hand, or at least try, because it's a lot of fun trying. Perfect. Okay, when to pass blind and when to stop the Charleston. This is something that this is one of, I think, the biggest questions I get from people. Somehow along the way, some newer players, I don't know if they were taught this or not, but they have said it to me many times, they stop the Charleston because they're confused between two hands. Okay, I got some head shakes. So there's some people brave enough to admit that they have this happen to them. Okay. All right. You're really shooting yourself in the foot when you do that. Okay? I want to put it mildly. And the reason you are is because you have now going to give up all the rest, 3, potentially 4 more passes of getting in tiles that you need. So don't, if anything, if you leave with anything today, please don't stop the Charleston because you're between 2 lovers. 2 hands. Goodness, like that slipped out. No, really and truly, I'm just saying, you don't want to stop the Charleston because you're between. So what do? Well, you've got to assess the situation. The brain has to start working. Which hand is easier? Which hand has less pairs? Maybe no singles. Maybe a couple of pungs and a couple of klongs. Maybe that one's going to be a little easier because those are easier to make, right? So we just do that and you go with it, because you can't keep everything. But don't give up your options. I don't know about you, but I very often, on the last right and optional across, get a brand new tile that works out in my hand. Yes. And I don't say a thing, but I smile inside. All righty. Optional across. How many people, wait a minute, let me rephrase this. How many people will pass 1 across if somebody says they want just 1? I want bravery now. I want to see some hands. Oh, really? So if somebody says 1, you do the 1? Yeah. Well, okay, like I said, everybody has their own style, but for me, I say no thank you. Because I don't want to take a chance of giving 1 more tile to the person. And sometimes a player has broken up their tiles, and sometimes you'll even hear them say, I gave a tile away. We all heard that. We could probably all write a book together on all the things that are said around the Mah Jongg table. But how many times have you heard that, and that player gets it back in the optional across? So you don't know, but it can happen, and it does happen. So I say no thank you. That's just my preference. And My friends still will love me, I think, even though I don't take their one tile. Oh my goodness. Okay, play at the family level until there are no discards. That's the way you do it. You just keep doing your thing until you have nothing left in the beginning game. So you don't have to make any decision. If you're going for low end 1, 3, 3, 5, or you're going for some consecutive runs, no decisions are made until you run out of a discard. And then you might have to decide which one of that run that you're going to go for. Then you might be able to dwindle it down to 2 and create more discards. And then do the same thing all over again. Get rid of the discards, and then once you've run out, you look at the 2 things left and you say, that one's the safer one. Because we do all want a mahjong. And yes, I do play singles and pairs if I have no jokers. And I'll stick to it even if I get one. How many times do you do singles and pairs and then all of a sudden you're picking one joker, discarding? Everybody's making a lot of oohs and ahs. Next pick, another joker, you're discarding it, you hear the same thing over. It goes on and on, right? Oh, the stories we could all tell. All right, so by the end of the second wall, okay, so you have your first wall that was broken, you have now your second wall. By the end of the second wall, you're pretty much at that point committed to one family. So whether it's consecutive run or 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 or another one. Okay, now let's talk about calling too early and staying concealed as long as possible. This is another newbie thing, so you new players out there, I know calling is exciting. Will you admit it? Isn't it? Isn't it? You want to grab that tile real quick, right? Okay, well, with Mahjong, you don't want to call too early. Because calling a tile and exposing can, number one, say a lot about your hand, especially if you then have to call a second exposure, pretty quickly. But not only that, if you put up a tile with a joker early on, somebody's gonna grab that joker. Yeah, you have an opportunity, but you've just presented, you have a 1 in 4 opportunity, you've presented it to 3 other people. So if you can hold off, now again, this is all, contingent to what's going on amongst your tiles, but if you can wait until 2 or sometimes even 3 are out there to call, and then you do, how many people complain, oh, nice joker, oh, they're not available anymore, oh, they're all out, right? You hear all that stuff over and over again. So, it's, and if you have 3 natural tiles in your hand, and the 4th one goes out, I call it the rule of 4. You call it. You're not going to let it go, because then you'd have to fill in that pung or kong. Everybody know what a pung and kong is? Yeah. Anybody don't know? Okay. A pung is a grouping of 3 tiles. It's a Chinese term. A kong is a grouping of 4 like tiles. So any identical tiles, regardless of what they are, 4 flowers are a kong, 4 8 cracks are a kong, as long as they're similar. And the pung is 3. So, and if those terms are on the back of the National Mahjong League card and used throughout in parentheses, which you're supposed to be reading. So if you don't know what that means, it's going to be really hard to figure out what they're talking about. So it's a good thing to get in practice and get familiar with those terms. Okay, so it is really, like I said, it's very subjective, but you have to use your best judgment. If a 4th one goes out, you would be shooting yourself again in the foot if you don't take it, because then you're going to have to fill that in with a joker. If you don't get any jokers, oh boy, that makes it a little difficult. Okay, now, does anybody know what joker bait is? No. Oh! You know what it is!
Michelle.
Oh my goodness! Oh! Okay, she's watched my partner's video, so she knows. Right, Monday, see, I have a follower. Oh my goodness, Michelle, we have a follower. This one's for you in the audience that knows what joker bait is. Okay, so joker bait is a really fun thing to have happen, and I bet you guys might, even that haven't heard of the term, probably do it anyway. Joker bait is when you have, let's say, you had a 2 crack after the Charleston and you picked in another one soon after, and you're not playing with 2 cracks at all, right? You remember, I sometimes remember the Charleston passes, and I try to work on that more and more, and I remember none went around in the Charleston, so I'm thinking, somebody's playing 2 cracks. Well, I wait, and I hold on, and I hold on, and I hold on, and I keep waiting, and then a little bit later on, I'll throw a 2 crack, and it gets called with a joker. Now, sometimes when they put up a pung, I'm like, darn it, it didn't work this time. But when it works, it's magical. It's so cool. Has anybody had that happen? Yeah, it's really a nice little thing to have happen. All right, safe tiles. Who has heard of safe tiles? Oh, okay, you probably all know what a safe tile is, right? Everybody knows pretty much what a safe tile is? A safe tile is a tile that no one needs, okay? So why do I say hold on to safe tiles? All right, I'm going to tell you. Do you ever notice, and I know that most of you probably notice this, I'm thinking, well, you're playing and you start. East starts and East does East. The next player does West, and the next one does South, the next one does North, the next one, and before you know it, everybody's saying, well, I guess nobody was using wins, right? Okay. When you're playing this game, you have to set yourself up for success. And holding on to safe tiles will do that for you, and trust me, it does work. So if you know that nobody held on to certain tiles, they kept coming back around and around, I just turn them upside down, just to alert my head to that they're safe tiles, and I stick them on the inside of my discard. So if I have 4 or 5 discards on the right, I put it in the front of them, I turn it upside down to let me know that those are safe tiles. At the end, how many of you have had no safe tiles to discard and you have everybody's Mah Jongg tile? If you incorporate this strategy, you will see that will turn around, and it does for me all the time. All the time, and I'll be like, oh my God, I'm so thrilled I saved those tiles. Very few people use this strategy, but it's a real good one. All right, so we're now going to be in the middle game, working on the third wall. All right, so those fresh tiles by the end of the third wall. Now, fresh tiles are the opposite of safe tiles. Fresh tiles are tiles that you get in that are brand new. So it works in a way in conjunction with the safe tiles in that instead of getting rid of, which a lot of people do, they pick from the wall, they see they don't need that tile, but then they start just getting rid of all their safe tiles, which I want you guys to try and start saving a little bit, and they end up collecting other people's tiles. And again, this is a beginner thing. This is for newer players. They do this where they're worried that every tile from the first tile that goes out might be someone else's. But what I want to say about this is that if you play to get rid of every tile that you pick from the wall, other than something that maybe you have to get out in your hand, like if you were left over with a soap and you want to get the soap out early, that's a good idea, that you discard. Pick and discard. Pick and discard. You have at least 3 full walls to do that without thinking, okay, someone's going to call a tile, that's fine. But you'd rather them call it for an exposure than keep collecting everybody's tiles you think that somebody needs, and then they call Mah Jongg later. So you keep safe tiles, and you get rid of fresh tiles. And those two strategies together really will make a difference, especially for a newer player, because it'll speed you up. That's a speeding up technique. Don't think, pick, put it on your rack, don't need it, out. Pick, put it on your rack, you don't need it, out. And that's it until you get down to the end game. All right. All right, do not call a discard until you are ready to commit to a hand. That's a definite. Again, for the newer players, I know it's exciting to call, but the hand has to be, there has to be a hand there that you want to play. Otherwise, you're going to get trapped into doing something, and then you're not going to be able to even have a chance of making mahjong. So that's a key. Of course, for newer players, this is common, right? And a lot of people I know will mark their cards up, highlight their cards, put something, for the concealed. Check before you call. Just check. Make it a habit. Just look over there. Oh, see there, can't do it. All right. Watch what in the middle game, you're going to watch what other players are discarding and exposing, because you're going to have to start at that point identifying what they're doing. That's when you want to start being a little bit more careful with what you're going to throw out. Okay, discard joker bait by the middle of the third wall, because you don't want to, those tiles especially, if you see that you have two cracks in your hand and there's not been one discarded, you don't want to wait till the end game and throw it, then you could definitely be giving somebody mahjong for sure. All righty. All right, so you should be then, by this point, have committed to a single hand towards the end of the third wall. All right, redeem jokers from another player's hand to I think my slide picked two up at the same time, okay. To prevent someone else from benefiting. Everybody's aware of doing that, okay. If there is the ability to take a joker to prevent someone else from getting a joker, you should do it. And guess what that joker would be considered? A safe tile. Yes. Add it to the safe tile collection. Especially if you don't need it, that is. If you need it, you use it. Okay. Leave at least one joker amongst others' exposures to avoid paying for a jokerless hand. Oh my goodness. I don't know that I'm ever going to get this. I do this. I do follow this strategy. But I don't know how many people do. How many people really do this in this group? There's one. Because you want the joker more than you care about paying, right? Of course. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I think, for me it's interesting because I also think about the fact that if I do something silly, I won't say stupid, silly, then I'm not only paying, but sometimes the other people have to pay. But with a third, if you were to leave someone jokerless with 3 exposures and someone throws into it, we all know you get penalized, right? But again, I don't want to make someone jokerless because not only do I pay a higher value, but everybody else does too. So I try not to. Did I ever? Probably. I'll admit it. I'll admit it. Okay, now we've got begin, middle, and now we're going to the end game. Last wall. Play to win or be defensive. Oh my goodness. That's like, we all have that happen, right? We all have a beautiful hand and then we've got no more safe tiles. We've dumped them all and we keep getting in a few mahjong tiles where we know they're somebody's mahjong tile. And you have to break up your hand. Now, okay, here's something that's very subjective because I'm going to tell you right now, if you want to go for the win and you know you have enough picks in the wall, okay, you have to know that. If you know there's a chance of winning and you've got a beautiful hand, I'm okay with going for it. I mean, I'm not going to beat someone up because they went for it and they threw a flower in the last 8 tiles. I don't do it myself, but I know there are people that like to go for the win. So you go for the win. But you're going to try to make good decisions. Break it up if you don't have a chance. Some people sit there and they hem and haw for like ever, and I'm like, you don't have enough picks left. You have what? Or I don't know that they don't have enough, but I'll say you have 2 picks left. Can you make Mah Jongg in 2 picks? And they're like, no. What are you thinking about? Break your hand up. Who cares? Okay, so count the cost. Assess the viability of your hand. We all just talked about. Assess the viability of your opponent's hand. Consider the hand values and consider others, which I also just mentioned. Prioritize the discards. So prioritize. Keep tiles that have not been discarded or exposed at this point. Discard safe tiles last, if you can help it. Oh, there's a double. Okay. Switch to defense. Do not call for exposures if you cannot win. How many people do you know that at the end of the game you knew they couldn't make Mah Jongg, but they called for an exposure and put up a joker? And then guess what? Somebody Mah Jongg, right? Okay. Alrighty. Do not claim exposure, discards for an exposure with a joker if the natural tile is not on the table. That's it. You just have to follow. Some of these are common sense, right? Some are subjective, some are common sense, and we just don't want, it doesn't make sense to do it. Alrighty. So discard tiles that have been exposed or discarded. Discard number tiles with 3 or more that are out or in a hand, except your tiles in wins. So at that point in the game, you really don't know if you could be giving somebody the big hand win. Has anybody here won the big hand? The bottom hand on the right side of the card? The 2021 big hand card. I came close once so far. The card's been out since the beginning of April. Last year. You did? Last year? This year you did? Congratulations.
Not me, I saw Michelle do it.
Oh, you saw her? Yes, she told me about that one. It's exciting. It really is fun. It's fun to try. I came close. I was on call. Does anybody use the word on call, by the way? Or do you say one away? Okay. Yeah, I had a call. I played with a group the other day, and the girls never heard it. So I had to call the league. I'm forever calling and bugging them about something. But I said, have you ever heard the term on call? I'm from the Northeast, so it was a Northeast thing. And they said, oh yeah, on call means you're one away from Mah Jongg. I said, well, nobody in California has heard of that. And they said, well, I think it's a Northeast thing. But either is acceptable. So you just learned a new term. On call means you're one away from Mah Jongg. Okay, discards. When you're playing defensively, don't hem and haw about what to, if you've broken your hand up toward the end, don't, figure out what you're going to pass. Just throw the jokers out. All right, this is the fun part here. Tells. I love this part of strategy. I love it. All right, tells. Situational awareness can be to your advantage. I don't know how many of you use this, but it's a fun thing to do and incorporate. If you've already got the game down pat, you've got these other skills down pat, this is another thing you can use. Verbal tells and sounds. People that make a when their next tile's going out, right? Or what about the ones that just thank you right there at the table and let you know what's going on in their hand? I mean, it's crazy, right? But they do, and they make all kinds of like groans and moans and everything. Pay attention if you don't pay attention. It gives a lot of information. All right, physical tells. I mean, is it obvious or what? It's interesting. So if you watch people's reactions, It's going to tell you a lot about what they're doing and what they need. It's really fun. Okay, card, that should be, card, yes, okay, I added, this is actually a new one I added. I'm going to give my husband credit for this, my husband Randy, actually, because this was a very good one. My husband plays Mah Jongg. He's a good player, let me tell you. He's always thinking of new things, and I'm like, wait a minute, I've been playing since I'm 26, like, how come you're coming up with this? But what he noticed is that if you have the card in front of you, right, and you watch where somebody's eyes are going, you could almost tell what family they're playing. I didn't have that in my tells. That's a really good one, thank you. So I added that. Okay, how about tile tells? Does anybody ever play with anybody who puts, I hope, if you're here, I'm apologizing before I say this, but don't put your tiles sideways. Does anybody do that? Don't do that, it tells a lot. I mean, honestly, I pull apart every little thing that goes on at the Mah Jongg table. I'm telling you, it's too much overload for my brain already. But then all you need to do is add something like that to the mix and put the tiles sideways, and I'm all over that. I really am. Turn it upside down. Turn it upside down, then nobody sees anything. Okay? The same thing. Don't separate. Don't put separations in your tiles. Okay? Don't. That tells a lot.
Are you talking about in your hand or on the exposure?
No, this is in your own hand. In your own hand. Yeah. Because on the exposures, it's courtesy to separate. Yes. Okay? All right, so sideways tiles, separations, how tiles are being arranged and where discards are taken from. That's a biggie, a biggie. While the three other players are taking their turns, get your discard in position on the very end, on the right. Because if you take and pull a tile the second or third in, that to me is an indication, unless you're unless you could keep track of all kinds of crazy advanced strategies, we're not going to go there today, I'm going to know that you have at least 2 or 3 tiles left. And if I have a tile in my hand that I think is dangerous, I'm then going to get it out, because I know you don't probably need it, based on what you have exposed. Of course, there's a lot of little elements, but do you guys get that? Okay, so when you have your discards, right? Let's say you have 3 tiles on the right side that are all discards, okay? While the other 3 players are taking their turn, make sure you know which one of those 3 tiles you want to discard and put it. What I do is I'll mix my tiles up, so I don't want to make anything obvious. I just don't. So I'll mix other tiles up, but I'll take the tile that I know I'm discarding and put it to the right, so that when it's my turn, it's the furthest tile to the right that goes out on the table. When people take the second in or the third in, or even sometimes one in the middle, which I don't know what's going on there sometimes, but that tells me they are not ready to Mah Jongg. And it allows me to, especially towards the end of the game, this is when this is most important, towards the very end of the game. It's marvelous. These little tells, or big tells actually, are really fabulous.